Do you like the cold? Well, I used to before the incident, but I'm already getting too far ahead of myself, so let's start with getting to the frozen hellscape. For this, I need a boat. This one is of course called the Gar Glider, as we are heading to the so-called water world. As you know, power is important, and if you have more than 10 brain cells, you also probably know that the further you get away from the sun, the less sunlight there is, and therefore solar panels get worse. So everyone with a brainstem could tell you that you should probably not power your Aquilo ship with solar power. But let's not get ahead of ourselves again, cause first I need the weaponry. This of course has the usual yellow ammo, which I make with iron I get from these foundries, which is very convenient as it does not take 80 electric furnaces for the plates. And on top of those, I also need the fuel. And you've probably seen me make these before, so it's just this, again. But on top of that, I also need rockets. See, while you're flying around, you have these little rocks you get to blow up. However, on the way to Aquilo, you meet the large, Chad-like versions of these space rocks, which are pretty much immune to bullets. So, these rockets, as well as the rocket turrets I unlocked on Glibba, will allow me to turn those so-called Chads into paste. Also, as we look at this ship, you may be noticing something. You know how it only takes a brainstem to realize that solar-powered Aquilo ships are not a good idea? Well, I forgot that like one tile through the construction process, so here we are, Gar Glider, the solar-powered Aquilo boat. While the engineers in the feed would have you think that making this boat move to Aquilo would cause it to evaporate into small splinters, Gar is too good for that, and makes the trip there without having any difficulty actually. Sure, the power gets a little bit low, but that's not a big deal, it made it so it's fine. So here we are. It's a little chilly, and there's no floor in which to place my machines. This will not do, so I quickly get to work, but before anything, I need power. And that is a problem. See, on literally any other planet, I could just slap down a nuclear reactor like I did on Glibba, or slap down something else that makes power. But no, that is not something the so-called water planet allows. First off, this is not water. That is liquid ammonia with a slurry of ice particles, which the game calls ammoniacal solution. But this is really just shaved ice with a little too much flavoring syrup, which just so happens to be slightly toxic. But by shoving the Slurpee into a chemical plant, I can separate the ice from the drink, and use it to make new ice platforms to increase the area we can build on, while also getting some spare ammonia to turn into burnable fuels. This burnable fuel is also good, because if you couldn't tell, while my body can take this cold without any effort, I need to heat all of my machines so they don't die of hypothermia. And of course, to start that process, I just slap down a nuclear reactor to get some warmth. And regrettably, I do have to use some solar panels to kickstart the process. These solar panels make 600 watts each, which if you didn't know isn't even enough to power your mother's electric toothbrush, let alone my machines. But taking some of the ice, I can melt it into water, and take this water and heat it further in a heat exchanger to make steam, and shove this steam through a steam turbine to make my power. That's right, not only am I moving this through 3 states of matter, but as always, the real understanding of progression for the so-called intelligent is just measured by how much steam you can generate and shove through pipes and motors. Anyway, I still have a very limited area to stand, and this little area, while functional, is terribly slow. So I wander over to the northwest corner and build this long platform stack. And for safety, I guess we can double it and keep it for ourselves, and as last time, the extra ammonia is used for fuel to keep the water warm. But as usual also, we're not here just for power, we're also here for science. So first, I need the new building. Aquilo's building is the Cryogenic plant, a building that can take cold temperatures. On the inside. Ice still forms on the outside because why wouldn't it? Fortunately, the Cryogenic plant is pretty easy to make. Well, kinda. It's easy, but only because I have Gar sending me stuff. The blue circuits and reinforced concrete can be nabbed from Nalvis, the superconductors from Fulgora, and then we just need lithium plates, which we can get from smelting the lithium I pulled out of the icebergs when we arrived. So for now, easy. So with that, I can now go on to the science pack. This is also not too hard. I mean, one of the materials is literally just ice. And while considering I'm currently standing on God's mightiest ice cube, that's pretty easy. Then the other 2 are a little harder, but not too terrible. First, I need to make lithium. This takes the ammonia I pulled out of the ice, and lithium brine, which is just pulled out of the icebergs, and lastly, some holmium plates, because Woob refuses to let me forget Fulgora. I bring the holmium plates in with a requester chest because I was lazy, I guess, but this is honestly not a great idea because the ice makes my bots very sad. But like, it's really all I need for now. This is just a 60 science per minute build for now. But other than that, I just separate the slurry and pipe in the fluids. Then I just shove the lithium into furnaces to make the plates. Fairly easy. And then after that, we need the fluoroketone. This takes some of the lithium from the last step, more ammonia, some fluorine, which just is pulled from the ground, and then solid fuel, which is also just ammonia and oil. Then I just need to cool that stuff down, which, like, just shove it in this building for a couple seconds and the ice planet should do the rest. Then just shove all that into the cryogenic plants to make the Cryogenic Science packs, and also it spits out some excess hot fluoroketone that can just be cycled back to be chilled out. And since I'm lazy and it really isn't that big a deal, I just shoved the output into storage boxes that the logistic bots can handle. It's cold, but like, it's not that cold. Then, all there is left to do is set up an extra rocket silo and send the science up to Gar, so I can send it back to my house and actually use the stuff. That said, there is a small issue with this little place. And that's the size. That's right, baby. Size does matter, because if your setup is tiny, how the hell is it supposed to make 45 science per second, huh? That's right, you and your micro factory could never dream of that. But, in order to make an acceptable sized factory, I need more materials. So like a smart person, I grab a ton of ice platform and bridge out and try and find more material. However, Aquilo kinda sucks. There's like no places, so I don't find nearly enough stuff. Then of course I get to the base and the power's out. So of course I paste down this nuclear blueprint. Yup. This is not gonna work on Aquilo for, you know, heating reasons. So after removing that, I just kickstart what I already have and pretend it will be fine, even though I already know it won't be. But anyway, that whole ice bridge stuff was not effective at all, so I need an alternative. So onto the smart path or something like that. Getting back to space and onto the Gar glider, I head over to Nauvis. Then I go back up into space but onto the Roboco runner, so I can go to Fulgora. Oh Pharaoh, how I hate this place. However, it has some value, specifically mech armor. To make this, I just make some modules, use those to make Power Armor Mark II since I never did that. Then, I just mug some materials that were supposed to be science to make it into mech armor. And with that, back to Nauvis so I can make more equipment to fill the equipment grid, including another nuclear reactor. And then, with the stuff back into space, I go back to Aquilo and fly in loops around Aquilo so I can have a slightly better view of what's where, and I cannot have to make more shitty ice bridges. And with that, I probably have enough material scouted out. So now, to the plot. See, if you couldn't already imagine, this build is gonna be quite large. So I'm gonna plot it out over in a creative world so that it won't look completely terrible. First, the science area. This grid shape is where the science will be made. Got materials coming in on the belts that point vertically, and then shooting the output on the horizontal belts. But of course, these four are not enough, even with the beacon. And so of course, I simply add more to get this funny rectangle. But, the science rectangle needs production to feed it. So over here, I make a weird rat tail that makes the lithium and ice I need. Which may cause you to say something like, Lucy, didn't you say you were doing this whole thing just to make it look good when you made it in the real world? Why would you add that stupid rat tail? It looks ugly and you should be ashamed. Well, first off, fuck right off. Secondly, this looks ugly because it's not finished. See, this thing does not make 45 science per second, it only makes a quarter of that, so I need 4 more of them. But I'm not just gonna paste them end to end, I'm gonna paste them mirrored around a center point, so these rat tail parts make a good gap in the middle, a perfect spot for our cargo landing pad. See, I am not using logistic bots for this, because they simply cannot keep up on Aquilo. Even with all my robot speed upgrades, they can still barely make it between 2 roboports between charges. So, it is going to be belts all the way. So with the cargo lander in the middle, I can just use inserters to pull the holmium I need for the lithium onto belt and lead them to the lithium segment. And then, I just need to make the pipes that lead out and the belt from the middle look nice and symmetrical. Very nice. Now, I just have to build the thing in world. But some of you, based on my description of the logistic bots issue, may have realized that that might be more annoying than it sounds. But before I can even deal with that nightmare, I need to collect materials. This requires the expected, like 13,000 heat pipes, 1,800 underground pipes, 1,500 bluebells, 60 heating towers, etc. However, the items that are actually going to be a big problem are the modules. Yep, I actually remembered that modules exist this time, which leads to the vast increase in productivity and speed that comes with modules. However, it also leads me to needing almost 2,000 productivity module 3s and a much less threatening 280 speed module 3s. The 2,000 productivity modules suck, because my captive nest broke free who knows how long ago, so it has not been stockpiling the modules I need. So, getting Sonolite back on the move so I can actually get the bioflux for it, and recapturing the sinners, I just have to wait for the hundreds of productivity modules to actually craft. Blissful. Also, I get to run over to Vulcanus to set up production for the speed modules as well, but besides it leading to me strangling my rocket production for blue circuits, it's not really that notable. And now moving into clip 15, which I will have you know is named Beginning Construction, my god this is gonna suck, I move on to construction, which is in fact going to suck. See, as a Factorio player, I cannot be bothered to build this all by hand. Literally, who has time for that? So I designate it to the bot brigade. However, as you can see right here, this instantly causes a massive bot backup because they can barely reach the build site before needing a recharge. Now, me and you could sit here and watch the whole thing, but the engineer, your personal savior, elected not to record the hours of footage this took. So I probably should have helped more, but you know, I at least help with the ice platforms and stuff. But anyway, this is the build. But it doesn't work, because this whole thing is covered in ice. So of course, now I need to warm it up. But how hard can that be? I start by placing nuclear reactors on each corner to start heating it up. Surely I will not need more than this, and the built-in heating towers in the middle. I also, for sure, did not paste that nuclear reactor blueprint again while doing this. Surely I cannot be that stupid. Instead, like an idiot, but like in a different direction, I begin working on a big steam power build that works off of the heating towers. Mostly because I could not be bothered to design a nuclear reactor that works on Aquilo, and also because there is, for sure, not a super easy, super efficient, super clean form of energy I literally unlocked on this planet. Yep, this is clearly the optimal route, and that's, not a real thing. So of course, next clip we cut to me trying to hand heat the science build in an attempt to get the solid fuel to get produced for self-heating, because the nuclear reactors at the corners were in fact not enough, and my foolish brain thought this would be effective. It was not. And while doing this foolish errand, the power also turns off again, because of all things, I ran out of water. If only there was a power solution that was not only effective, but did not need water. Shame that doesn't exist. So of course, as the title of my next clip says, more pump jacks, more heat, and more attempts to kickstart the science build. This gets to the science build kinda turning on, except for where it isn't because it's still too cold. But it's kinda sorta working. See, there's even science on this belt. That's clogged because the belt is also frozen. Yeah. So, while that for sure sorts itself out, I set up nuclear heaters for the pump jack outpost too. Then I walk back to another power outage. And despite the evidence of the futility of steam power, I just paste another line of it and pretend like it's good. But it isn't. Because guess what? I'm still running out of water. But then, the revelation strikes. After clicking on the power for the science build and seeing the power flatline in a heartbeat, I realize the futility of steam. I must become better, beyond the capacity of you humans, and unlock a form of power that is more potent than hot water. And as it turns out, I already have the technology. So running up to the old science build, I set up a leech build to produce quantum processors. These little guys are very expensive, but I need them for this divine power source. And what power is that? Well, it's fusion power. I could pretend to be smart and try and explain how fusion power works, but the engineer made this, not me, and I'm not smart like the engineer. I am a fool. So I'm not gonna do that. Instead, grabbing the materials I can, I make this little fusion build. This build is really bad, but just this one fusion generator can produce an impressive 50 megawatts. Not bad. And this one fusion reactor can power 2 generators. However, that is not enough. If you cast your mind back to ye olde nuclear reactors, you might remember that the adjacent nuclear reactors make each other more powerful. Power of friendship and all that. Well, fusion reactors do that too, but even better. See, these don't just boil some trashy water. No, these take in fluoroketone and heat it up so hard that it turns into straight plasma. And for each reactor in the Snuggle Puddle, the temperature of this plasma increases. In fact, just having one fusion reactor friend makes each reactor work with double the power. So, while one reactor can fuel 2 generators, 2 reactors can fuel 8 generators. And even with this baby, tiny, pathetic setup, I'm already making some good power. So instead of 2, or even 3 reactors, let us use a calm 14 reactors. That's right, that is like a few. But since they're such good friends, they function at the capacity of like 56 reactors. The power of friendship really is a powerful tool. So after waiting for all the reactors and generators to craft, I'm almost done. Almost. I still have to heat it up. And yes, there are nuclear reactors in the fusion reactor build for that purpose. They keep things at a comfortable temperature so all of the friends are not dying of hypothermia. And by friends I mean just the pipes, because the fusion reactors don't actually freeze. Because I guess they're immune to snow. Which, I mean, I guess they're warm, but like... never mind. But last thing to do is feed them. Power of friendship isn't as effective if all of your friends are starving to death after all. So for food, we have fusion fuel cells, just a bunch of heavy metals shoved into a canister. And for drink, we have more of the good old fluoroketone. The fluoroketone is recycled with the perfect efficiency, and after being chilled is just sent back to be beverages again. And with that, I have attained it. Unlimited power. Truly, this is what life is all about. And so, with this, and shoving more nuclear reactors into the science build to keep it toasty, it can actually finally run at the speed it's supposed to. But last things last, we all know that 2 silos is not enough to launch all this science, so how about 6? If the engineer or me were paying any attention, we probably would have put the fusion reactor in line with the output so this didn't look so strange. But alas, we forgore. But this works fine anyway. Perhaps the beauty was the functionality we found along the way. Or maybe it is the science build, because frankly this thing is really nice. Too bad next episode, however long away that might end up being, I'm gonna rip all this down, as I'm gonna have to make my science output much more impressive than the mere 45 science per second I currently have. And for reference, that is 2.7 thousand science per minute. So pretty good compared to the 60 SPM I made before. But do not be fooled, this is far from optimal. Gleba isn't even on this level, Fulgora is a trash heap hellscape, Vulcanus... Actually, Vulcanus is pretty good, besides for the usual crippling lack of modules, and while the ribcage on Novice is mostly good, these damn pelvis junctions have deadlocked about 100 times now, and I'm sick of it! So, know that in time, but maybe not even the next Factorio video I make, let alone anytime soon, I will tear this whole system apart, finish the game fully, and at the very least, double my science production. But for now, watch the skies, and I'll see ya soon.